Hello, this is a Steingraeber upright piano, 135 centimeters tall, but with the extra decoration it goes up to 150 centimeters. Just coming to stock, so just assessing it to see what sort of work we need to do to improve the piano. Now it's made in 1905. I'm not certain what this wood is. Rosewood is common for 1905, but this is certainly not rosewood. I'm pretty sure about that. If you're a wood expert, would be very grateful for your opinion on this. My polisher's not here to give his opinion, but I don't know if it's mahogany either. Certainly there's possibly different woods used on the piano. Sorry, I meant to say certainly this is walnut, I'm pretty certain. So the casework, if you are good on woods and are able to help me out there, that would be very useful. Now the piano, Steingraeber make unique pianos. They're very often experimenting with different designs too. They make a huge number of pianos compared to firms like Yamaha, who later on made 100,000. Steingraeber, this was one of their, at their height. I'll show you how many they made roughly in that year. So you can see here that Steingraeber in 1905 made approximately 800 pianos according to the serial numbers, or maximum number made was 800 pianos. In comparison, Bechstein in 1905 were making up to 4,205, and I think their serial numbers represent the number that they actually made that year, though of course it may be slightly less. Bluthner, on the other hand, in 1905 we see 2,500, and it's clearly going up by increments of 2,500 per year, so that will be the maximum number of pianos they made that year. The casework on this piano is in remarkably good condition throughout, almost perfect actually. We'll obviously try and perfect it even more, but that's very positive in its favour. Now there's no evidence of it obviously having been repolished, but it could well have been, and the underside here is the same colour as the rest. But it could well have been, in which case it's an extremely professional job because it's very integral, and even the underside of the lid there has been redone. One of the small technical features that I really appreciate on this piano, as many others, is the fact that these pedals are sloping downwards so much, which means you don't wear out the end of the pedal, which does happen on many other makes of piano. This Bluthner, for instance, if we look at the pedals, you can see that your foot gets on the edge of the pedal. Sometimes it's quite bad, and that you'll see pedals very worn. The right hand pedal, it's an indicator of how much use the piano's had. And those are a bit higher up too. This modern Grotrian, which has also just come into stock, also has very sensibly designed pedals with sloping downwards slightly and quite low. The piano has really perfect ivory keys, just slightly yellowed. And well, there's a very, very slight chip there. We can probably disguise that, and here as well. And by the way, it's 85 notes, as a lot of older German pianos are. You don't need the top 3 notes, as we've mentioned many times before, for exams, so no need to worry about that. So 88 notes, the top 3 notes aren't used very much at all, perhaps 1% of classical pieces or even less. If you want to comment on that, please do. Looking at the action, there's a few other comments I want to make before listening to the piano. And one of them, which I was very keen to get onto a video for, I know that technicians will be interested in this. Maybe you've seen it before, I certainly haven't. But this is what we call overstrung and underdamper, where the dampers are under the hammers. But it's also got, on the bass section, overdampers. So those are typical overdampers. Ivory and Blüthner of this age had overdampers anyway, but they tend to echo too much because the overdamper, as we've mentioned before, it doesn't shut off properly around this area here, or very well. We have a video on our restoration page trying to explain, sorry, not the restoration page, the common makes page, which tries to explain that. So I'm going to try and show the difference between what it's like with the dampers on, the overdampers on, and the overdampers off, to see if it cuts out a lot of the reverb. So here with them on now, it'll affect the notes above there because they'll vibrate above here, because these will vibrate in sympathy as well. So let's have a listen again. There's a bit of adjustment on dampers in this section as well to be done. Now I'm wedging up the overdampers to stop them working. Let's have a listen to it now. There's clearly a lot more echo. The strings are not cutting off properly with just the underdampers. So, as I say, Bechstein would use fly dampers, and this isn't a very good idea because you're making use of overdamper system, which was obviously been in use for a very long time. This Yamaha U3 has fly dampers here to cut off the high harmonics on those notes to help the damping. So they damp very, very well. A lot of Bechstein's uprights have fly dampers here. Don't have a Bechstein like that in stock at the moment, I'm sorry about that. But so that would be the normal way of improving the damping on bass strings. Looking at the piano in general, these I think are original tapes, so they're very clean. I can't see any evidence of the piano ever having been worked on, and in fact, indeed, there is slack if you play the notes. So they're playing that C there. As I'm pressing it down, there's a little bit of slack, which shows that it's not been adjusted. And I don't think the piano's been adjusted since it was made. Of course, I can't be absolutely certain about that, but they've all got slack in them there, so that does affect the touch quite a lot. So that's really important to take up that slack, which you do by adjusting these capstans here. So that would be the main work to do to make the touch better on the piano. So if you've got a piano and you want to know how to improve it, have a look at that, see if there's any slack there. Well, as I'm encouraging you to do that, by the way, don't take them too far because they won't work properly. There should be a minimal amount of slack will be safe. Though if you're a technician, you'd probably get it almost perfect, but you want the bottom part to move before the top, and certainly not for the hammer to be raised above the rail. That's really important, otherwise the jack might not go back under. So as I'm saying all these things, I better show you what I mean. So this jack here needs to go back under the hammer. So if the hammer's above the rail, it might not go back under at all when it comes back. So that's really important. Obviously much better to get a proper piano technician, but I know that some people watch these videos in places where there aren't any, so that's what you're going to do. Write to us if you want more information. Those are the end of the hammers. Now, have been quite, let's say, well used at some stage, but not hugely used, and there's enough hammer on here to be able to reface. There's not any need to change these hammers. Obviously look at the top hammers to see how much wear there is on there, and there's plenty of felt left on there. In fact, they're hardly used, actually. A couple more things before we listen to the piano. This is the worksheet we do nowadays on pianos when they first come in. We're just checking the touch weight, which is too heavy on a lot of them. It should be 50 grams, not 55 there. 50 plus or minus 2 will be acceptable, and then a bit heavy there generally. And the bass has quite a lot of very heavy sharps here, so that all needs to be reset. The first thing we need to do is just check the lubrication. The piano's not been used for a long time. If we pull the keys up, by the way, don't try and pull them from the front here because they're ivory, they might come off. So they should go back down again, and as you can see, they're not. So they're too stiff in the centre. That'll count for reduction of some of the weight, and then see if there's other lubrication to do. Otherwise, we're going to have to reweight the keys as well, which is quite common to have to do. Now, I just want to listen to one of the things we've got here is quite a surprise. Was to me very much a surprise, actually. So let's listen to this note here, and if you're a technician or tuner, let's just see if you can detect what pitch it's at the moment. That should be A440. Now there's Bechstein Grand here. So it's approximately a semitone flat, 410 on. Well, the piano varies slightly, but it's generally quite well in tune with itself. We'll just have a comment on that in a minute. So we'll raise it up to 442 to allow it to drop gradually back to 440. Just before doing that, just have a look down the bottom of the piano. I thought technicians might be interested in this, but to see how well made that is. These are old firms, no expenses spared compared to the modern mass production pianos. So if this was restored fully restored, and the touch and the tone should be far in excess of a modern piano. At least that's what we're going to aim for, and certainly the touch. I just want to zero in on here because as we're pitch raising, there is some danger of strings breaking, and these have got what we call German eyes, which is not so easy. So it's German eyes on the treble and the bass strings. I'll explain what that is by looking at some eyes that are not German. On this fully restored Bechstein, for instance, you can see that they're put on, they're tied on here, so you end up, if you want to take them off, it's quite easy to take them off. Whereas if you want to take these off, they're tightly on the pins, and so you have to really prise them off, and it's quite hard to get them back on again. It's possible, but it's much more difficult. And if the other strings break, that's the non-copper strings break, you can see they're all individual, which is often the case with top manufacturers. So this Bluthner grand, for instance, they're all individually strung here, and we'll see how that compares with other pianos. So going back to the Bechstein, the strings go down and back up again, so the tuning pins, you see the 3 strings there per note, and they're sharing a pin here. Now the reason they do them individually is that it's supposed to be slightly more stable. It's not really on balance. I would prefer this, because if the string does break, you can wind it down and back up again on the tuning pin. So as we pitch raise this piano, it's got to have a semitone pitch raise, and we're going to take the tuning pins down first. We're lubricating along here because that tends to be where they break, because there's kind of like a bond between over the years. If it's been left for a long time, a bond occurs here. So lubricate here, then we take it down, and then that'll break the bond, and then take it back up, and hopefully they don't break. I don't expect any breakages on this, surprisingly, because it's such a well-made piano. But if we break a treble string, for instance, then we've got to replace the whole string. So if the piano wire broke on this Bechstein, you could wind it down off one pin and wind it back onto the other. Sorry if you're a technician and know this already, but you can use the jump links below to skip these parts if you want to go to where the piano is played. But so that if we look at the string or the wire, piano wire, as it goes round and round the pin, so the string goes round, and you don't have to replace the whole thing, and it's better because it matches better as well to keep the original strings. So you wind it down one, back up on the other, and then you can use the same string again. There's obviously going to be less coil on it than there was before, but that doesn't matter. So the problem will be if we break one of these, because obviously we can splice bass strings, and I might have shown that in other videos. So it's better to keep the same string if possible, because a new one won't match so well. Obviously if you're replacing all of them, and that's no problem, but we want to keep these because the original sound of Steingraeber really thought carefully about what strings they wanted, and they don't deteriorate too much over the years. Bass strings, a little bit. It's the bass strings that deteriorate rather than the trebles, but it's still better to keep them from my experience. And the tuning pins haven't been knocked in at all. So again, we take them down, lubricate here, take them down, back up again, and then hopefully we won't break any. So I'll make an after video on this piano because we can see if we've broken any. So it is possible, occasionally they do break, which is agonising for us because we want to try and they don't break. So a whole pitch raise of semitone, and we're hoping that that'll solve the problem. Now, interestingly, being one tone flat like that, I think it's very likely, but I can't prove it, that with the action also being out of regulation, the hammer's being worn, clearly no work's ever been done on this piano, and I think very likely the piano's never been tuned at all since it was made, or perhaps maybe in the very early years. There's no marks of tuners on it, there's no pencil marks of any work being done, which you would normally find, and it's in remarkable condition. So apart from it being flat, they would have to do regulation and so on, but even the dampers are quite well regulated. If you press two of them down, they come off at the same time. If I press the keys down, they'll come off at the same time, although there's lots of keys slack, so we do have to do lots of regulation. If we try the damper pedal, that's the right hand pedal, it's not pulling them off enough, so that's to do. I was a bit concerned about whether the extra weight of the these are going to be difficult to regulate the bass so that the key weighting is correct, and that's something we'll have to look into. But it doesn't feel terribly bad. It is slightly heavier, I think, because of the two sets of dampers. So you've got a set of dampers under here and here. So I hope that's been helpful. I'm sorry if it's a bit long, but as I say, you can, if you're getting fed up with listening to me, you can use the jump links below to go to where the piano is played. So that's a Steingraeber upright piano, 135 centimeters tall, and made in 1905. Just come into stock, so just sort of trying to see what sort of work might improve it. And it's quite remarkable that the pitch is a semitone flat for such a high quality piano. And I'm just guessing, because there's no marks on the piano from piano tuners, nothing written on it, which you'd usually get over that long period, to suggest that any work's ever been done. And the people we bought it from said they don't remember it ever being tuned. So because it's such a high quality piano, it's stayed relatively in tune, amazingly, though it's gone flat gradually, flatter and flatter. Now, very often pianos go flat when they're dried out, but the soundboard is perfect, and the down bearing is perfect too. So there's no reason why this won't turn into a very, very high quality piano indeed. It'd be one of the best that we've ever had. So well made. And it'd be a great pleasure to play. At the moment it's out of regulation because it's just been played without any regulation. It needs voicing, well, it needs pitch, it needs refacing and voicing as well. Wherever you play it, it has a exquisite tone, really, and because the hammers need refacing, it's not really bringing out the tone as it should do. It's also got lots of power, as you can hear, and will play subtly as well. So no reason why you shouldn't buy this rather than a new piano if you want to study. We'll get the touch just as good as a new piano, if not better, because it's such a well-made piano. So I hope that's helpful. If you are interested in the piano, please do write to us, info@robertspianos.com, with any questions you've got, and we'll be delighted to serve you. Thank you very much.